Hey guys, welcome to Friday Night Amateur Hour, and this week I have been feeling a little bit insecure about the production value, and I probably should rephrase that to say not necessarily insecure about it, but I've been bothered. I feel a little bit of anxiety, like I could be doing better and I could be adding more production value to what I'm doing here on YouTube. And I've thought about this a lot of different ways because production value is something that takes time, and time means that it takes away from other things that I'm doing, and it also means that it could compromise my ability to publish content consistently. And so tonight, one of the things that I want to talk about is the kind of balance that I'm trying to find between consistency and being able to maintain a regular publishing schedule so that I can stay in touch and communication with my audience, and also managing to put enough planning and production and quality into it so that I feel good about what I'm doing and it's not just like the bare minimum of work. Now, for anybody who hasn't watched this channel before, my name is Steve Reichert. I'm a photographer and filmmaker, amateur, proud to be an amateur in that department, and this channel is all about digital storytelling and just really encouraging and trying to gather community around the idea of storytelling with a camera. And I'm one of those people, those annoying amateurs that can't decide whether he wants to be a photographer or a filmmaker. The truth is I love both. And I just love having a camera in my hands, and a lot of people have found their way to this channel looking at various reviews that I've done, and more recently kind of talking about my decision to disembark from the journey of being a professional photographer and to commit to being an amateur. And if you've watched any of these live streams in the past, you'll notice that the shelves behind me are empty, considering what they usually look like, and that is because I am mere weeks away from entering a pursuit of a second career, or really a first career in a lot of ways, as a nurse. So I'm going back to school to pursue nursing, and that's going to start in September, actually the last week of August. And that's one of the things that has gotten me thinking about the production value in the work that I'm doing, because I'm really keen on maintaining a consistent publishing schedule and to really plan ahead and have stuff ready to go so that my channel doesn't fall off while I'm going back to school. But at the same time, I also don't want to just like crank out a bunch of stuff that doesn't necessarily relate to or help you guys, and stuff that's just the minimum possible effort. Because frankly, for me, like, you know, I get satisfaction out of seeing stuff that I've made that I can really feel proud of. I mean, I like doing these live streams, but I never go back and rewatch these live streams and say, man, that was a great live stream. I had some really great points to make during that discussion, right? Like, I love having these conversations with you guys. And typically, since I guess technically I'm still introducing myself on some level here. Hey, King Yuzi, good to have you here. I saw Daniel Crotty checking in there a moment before. Welcome. You know, typically I bring a topic to the table that I discuss, but I'm always really happy to have you guys bring questions in and talk about literally anything that I am able or willing to discuss here on this channel. So feel free to chime in with questions as you guys have. Hi, Mario Crespi, good to have you here again. I remember having you here last week, and been good seeing your comments on some of my videos. I appreciate that, and welcome back. So yeah, I'm really thinking critically and struggling about kind of this balance between quantity and quality. And the thing that I've always said, the thing that I've always felt like, and that I've always heard, and that like I've tried to do at least myself, is to try to balance the highest quality that I can do, but without compromising the consistency at which I can do it. Now, Robin Talbot, I believe, just had a really interesting comment here. It was, high quality and less frequent is better than forcing a schedule of videos. Now, I would be interested to hear what you guys think about that. and I'm not necessarily in a position to disagree and say that's not accurate, but one of the things that I have noticed is that my channel has grown slowly and steadily. And if, just looking at what I have done, it's definitely not for everybody, and it's not like everybody is into the, thank you, Robin, I appreciate that compliment on the live chats. And hi, Rika, good to have you here. Probably not gonna go back and cobble a compilation of the live streams together. That's not a bad idea, but like I would need to have like literally a lot of free time and nothing else to do before I would go back and do that, because I still have so many projects that are still like on hard drives that I need to edit, and I'm getting ready to go out and start shooting another project, which is going to happen at the end of in the next week. Actually, I'm leaving. I'm going out to California, and then I'm going to Canada. I got a climbing trip, and I'm going to be shooting for the documentary project that I've been kind of crowdfunding through my Patreon community, which is all about access to insulin, of course, because I'm type 1 diabetic, for anybody here not aware of that. And so that's an issue near and dear to my heart, so I'm going to go out and start shooting stuff for that, and I'm going to be discussing that, of course, as we go along. But in terms of the content and stuff, I know that like the YouTube algorithm, that they definitely do reward you for consistency, and that there's a certain extent to which, you might be able to make bigger gains. And these are competing theories, right? That like if you make higher quality content, that even if you publish less regularly, you'll still gain more ground at each stroke than if you publish less frequently, but can gain, less. But in other words, you're gaining less ground per publication, but you're constantly publishing, so you're telling the YouTube algorithm, hey, this channel is active. I'm, working on this, and this is, give my channel watch time. So thank you, Mario Crespi. I really appreciate that that comment about the 365 Project documentary. That was a good learning experience, and I'm thankful I got a chance to do that. And I'm kind of curious as to what this next project is going to be like, because I don't necessarily have as clear of a vision. Like, this is more of a discovery, so a discovery process going in this next documentary process, because it's not something that I have done exactly like this before. It's uncharted waters, and so the exploration is both exciting and necessary for me, and the unknown, it really makes it an adventure, but it also is a little bit scary as I'm starting out on this process. King Yuzi says communication is key, letting the audience know when you'll be uploading rather than having a set schedule. Quality over quantity, slower growing but more loyal base. Probably. And Daniel Karate says time spent watching each video as well as time spent per session on YouTube are very important. I've heard that as well. They monitor if someone clicks away to another video or off of YouTube. And one of the things is I know that like YouTube will reward you if somebody is going from your video, or they split the reward, however you want to call it, the value, if you're keeping people on YouTube and ideally keeping people on your channel. The biggest penalty is when people click away from what you're doing and go off of YouTube. Then that's like a double whammy, very negative. And what I've always felt though is like trying to, and I really like publishing twice a week, because I feel like that's a pretty good schedule, and the live stream is nice and casual. There's not really any planning that goes into that. But, and especially as I'm getting ready to go back out on the road, I'm going to be traveling for a little while and shooting a few things. Now, I am kind of, that's a good question. I don't know if the YouTube algorithm can recognize it's switching tabs. I believe that it can, because like there are sometimes, like, for example, if you open a new video in a new tab, and like you right click and open link in new tab, and that tab pops up, it won't start playing until you actually click on the tab itself. So I don't know for sure about that, but I think it wouldn't surprise me if they can. I would always assume with YouTube analytics that they know more than what you would expect them to know, and they would recognize more than what you would expect. So yeah, but as I'm getting ready to travel for a little while and I'm trying to batch some content and, you know, be a couple of videos ahead, not like, you know, 10 videos ahead, but I have a bunch of ideas written down. And, you know, I'm just thinking about ways that I can go a little bit deeper, you know, and instead of just talking about the ideas that I have, because I like doing that, I like having sort of a communicative vibe where it's a casual conversation that I have with my audience, which is one of the reasons why I love these live streams. But I also want to kind of do better at telling a story surrounding the ideas that I have instead of just putting the ideas out there, just, you know, kind of just dropping them there. Queen of San Joaquin says, just dropping in to say hi. I'm trying to make a video and also attempting to make a windscreen out of a beer box. It's not working well. I'm sorry that the beer box windscreen is not working well. I would say that's about what I would expect from that, although a lot of times you'd be surprised you can cobble together some really decent stuff. I used a kind of a sound barrier, sound treatment, a box that used to be parked right behind me here. Of course, I moved all the stuff because I am moving to a different location. I'm moving actually to my dad's house while I attend school, so I have a couple more weeks here, and, you know, so we'll have to see kind of how that all goes, but we're going to have different surroundings. I'm going to have an opportunity to create a different space in which to record my videos, so that's going to be interesting, because my dad's place actually has pretty good light, doesn't have a lot of room, but I'm looking forward to kind of doing some YouTube recording space creation or optimization over there, because right now I'm in a closet, and you know, this is a good space for me to work when I edit and when I do a lot of other things like writing and whatnot. But in terms of recording in here, it's been pretty tough because it's tight, so there's not a lot of space to set up tripods, and it's a narrow enclosed space without external lighting, without enough power outlets to really, and well, I'll be out of the closet, yes. Yeah, the closet does have excellent acoustics. Yes, I will finally be out of the closet with its beautiful acoustics. So there's always, you know, challenges that you have to deal with there, but I'm definitely thinking about the ways that I can add a little bit more value just to make it more fun, you know, and put more into it and get better at storytelling. And what I've realized is that I have these tendencies, and I don't know if other people, you know, other creators here on YouTube experience this as well, but this thing where I just feel like, take care, Queen of San Joaquin. Hope you have good time and good fortune with your windscreen. And we'll see next week. Oh, actually, there probably will not be a live stream next week because I'm going to be in California, and probably the week after that. So this is going to be the last. I might surprise you with the live stream, but don't count on it. If you don't have notifications enabled for my videos and live streams, make sure to do that, because then that way, if I do have Wi-Fi and I'm able to make that happen, I can still hop on and chat with you guys. But I'm planning on being out shooting and climbing for the next couple of weeks. So yeah, trying to figure out kind of that balance of how to attack it. And, you know, I think that it's really easy to get scared or intimidated by the idea of making a plan, because when you make a plan for something, then there is a strict definition of success, or there is some bar that you have set for yourself that you then have to clear. And if you fall short of that bar, then you feel like a failure. And maybe it's not as cut and dried as that even, I don't know. But I feel like it's, at least that's the closest way I can get to wrapping my head around it at this point, is to say that I think that's what it is that I'm afraid to make a commitment of putting a pen on a paper and say, okay, this is the story that I want to tell and how I want to tell it, because it just seems like I'm afraid of getting lost in the midst of it and not getting my idea across, and then wasting a bunch of time trying to tell a story when at the end of the day I just want people to understand that, you know, a handful of succinct points that I feel like I could get across just simpler by sitting down in front of the camera and be like, look guys, here's what I think about this. And so sometimes, you know, it takes some discipline, and it takes a willingness to fail. And I think that that is a big part of anything creative. You know, you always have to keep in mind that it is going to be stressful. There is going to be failure as part of what you're doing. And that's okay. And you have to get to the point where you can tolerate that. So those are some of the things that I am dealing with, that I'm struggling with, I'm thinking about. And of course, traveling for the next couple of weeks, so my schedule is going to be a little bit intermittent, although I'm going to try to keep getting content published and out to you guys, because I like to avoid letting things sit for too long, because when things sit for a long time, then it gets stale and hard to work with, and just really try to attack the video stuff that I'm shooting. And I have kind of a big video coming out on Tuesday next week, my first video of the week, because, drum roll, I don't have a drum, and I'm not going to pound on the desk, but I mentioned in last week's live stream that I was not going to be able to keep the Fuji X-T2, and so that's going to be, I no longer have the Fuji X-T2, so I can expect a mass exodus of my subscribership as a result of that fact, because I've gone through, I know people are really attached to the Fuji cameras, or at least some people are, who subscribe to the channel, and they came here for the Fuji, and now it's like, well, we don't care what you're doing since you're not talking about the Fuji X-T2 anymore. Well, that is sort of true, because I have downgraded my system from the Fuji X-T2 to the X-Pro1, which I got one of those off eBay for like $300, and I love it. I love it. I am in love with this camera. I don't know whether it's the fact that I got it for next to nothing. I think something about the way it's laid out, the simplicity of it, is mind-blowingly amazing. I just absolutely love it. And I'm going to start posting some of the pictures on my Twitter and on my Instagram over the next week, which I'm at Living Vertical on Twitter and Instagram. And of course, if you're interested in hearing about kind of why I decided to get rid of the X-T2, not because it's a bad camera, nothing against the X-T2 whatsoever, it just was too much camera in certain areas and not enough camera in other areas, that ultimately it was just tying up resources. So the motivation for the downgrade, Robin, was that I found that most of the pictures that I was taking that I really liked, whenever it was kind of a like, I'm going to go do something, I'm going to grab a camera, almost always it was the X100T, not the X-T2, because most of the time it was like, well, I can put this in my jacket pocket, I can throw it in my bag, it's a little bit smaller, and the size profile, even though it's only a little bit smaller, made a really big difference to me. And in most circumstances, even where ideally I would grab the X-T2, I would still grab the X100T and just be like, I can get by with this. And I did. I would always get by, and like over the last 6 months, the majority of the pictures that I've taken that I'm like really stoked a lot. Yes, Zion Jeeps, Rob, good to have you here. Oh boy, this just got real. My buddy Rob from Zion Jeeps is on the live stream. Probably knows me better than almost anybody in the world, which is kind of a scary thought, but you're good people, Rob. Glad to have you on here with us. And yes, I do talk a lot, absolutely. And technically I even get paid to do that now, since I'm going to be teaching this fall. I'm teaching and going back to school as a nurse, so I'm getting paid to talk, in addition to doing all of this talking. So yeah, a lot of talking for me. I love to do that. But yeah, the motivation for the downgrade on the camera was basically, you know, I initially bought the X-T2 because I thought that it was going to be my one camera for everything. Basically, the way it turned out, it just wasn't a great camera for video for the way that I shot. The video quality, the image quality, all that stuff is superb. The handling, the lack of in-body image stabilization, and the lack of touchscreen made it really difficult to work with for shooting video, and especially once I compared it to the GH5. And so basically there's a lot of resources financially tied up in the video side of the X-T2 that I'm really not using at this point. And the other half of that is that the interchangeable lens system, the lenses on the Fuji, as I mentioned in my last video, I made a video all about the lenses that I like. The lenses are gorgeous and fantastic, but I don't like changing I don't like changing lenses. And, you know, some of that is lazy. Some of that is just the fact that, you know, I get used to seeing a fixed focal length, and that's where my mind goes, and it's much easier for me to create if I only have one lens on the camera. And so basically the interchangeability of lenses and the video were two things that are fantastic if I had expendable resources to put aside for that. But, you know, I just turned aside from pro photography because it was not working for me. So the camera isn't really paying my bills as such. The video side of things holds the most promise in terms of making any money, and the GH5 just kills the X-T2 in that department as far as I'm concerned. And the Fuji experience that I want for shooting stills, I can get that from an older camera body, and I only kept one lens, and that is the 24 equivalent, 24 millimeter equivalent, or the 16 f1.4, and just the X-Pro1 body, which, like I said, I'm absolutely in love with. And the other thing, and I probably should have just sold the X-T2 and kept the money, but what I did was I traded it for the X100F. I got a really awesome deal, and I know that the X-T2 is worth more than the X100F, so I probably could have done a little bit better financially if I had, made a slightly different trade. But I got actually probably not, because I got the X100F and I got the teleconverter for times that I really want, the 50 millimeter equivalent. If I want to do some portraits, I have this to work with. So I know it's a little convoluted. It may not make a whole bunch of sense. Why I would bail out of the X-T2, because the X-T2 really, really is a great camera. It's just, for me, it came down to a matter of economy and saying, look, like, I have $500 in my bank account this month, and I need to be able to, pay the bills. So I got to get rid of some stuff, and I got to look at what I'm not using and what I can afford to be without. And the X-T2 is something that, it's a beautiful camera, but I can absolutely afford to be without it. And the best part of that is that I don't have to be without the experience of shooting Fuji, and I can still do that, but I can do it on terms where I've kind of done a buffet style and taken a little bit more of the things that I want. And for me, honestly, the way I shoot and what I shoot, the X-Pro1, it's plenty fast. It's plenty fast. The files are plenty big. It's beautiful, and it's so simple. And it's so straightforward, and it's just like, I love it. I'd never handled or even thought about, the older cameras before. But now that I've done it, $300. You couldn't want a better experience as far as I'm concerned. And some people definitely know that they need a fast autofocus and they need all this stuff. But, I'm okay with it. And the funny thing is, like, I expected the X100F to have the same fast, snappy autofocus as the X-T2, and it definitely does not. But again, I can live without that, because like I've said in previous videos, when you speed up your ability to autofocus and acquire focus, and you can shoot faster, you definitely gain moments and you gain opportunities to capture things as you speed up. However, as you slow down, you also gain moments in a different way, but it has to do with how you orient your thinking. And some people, I think, mistakenly assume that everything is based on faster, faster, faster equals better objectively. And I think the reality is that faster or slower, there's room and need for both in different situations. And a lot of it has to do with how you pitch your sails, for lack of lack of a better way to put it, you pitch your sales in such a way that you take advantage of whatever your camera does well and the way that it operates, and you use that to create something that works for you, rather than pursuing a specific objective. A couple questions back. Red Angst, do I have any more climbing videos planned for the near future? Interesting question. I am going to be heading out on a climbing trip, my last hurrah before I go back to school in the end of August. So pretty much the middle 2 weeks of August, I'm going to be in California and Canada. I am going to be climbing with and also shooting for my documentary project that I'm working on, because I'm climbing with Type 1 partners and also going to be interviewing them and kind of using that as a launching point for my documentary about, kind of the issues that we're facing with trying to get affordable medication. So yes is the short answer to that. I'm pretty excited about that. Rob from Zion Jeeps asked me if I've ever thought of writing a ditty. I don't know exactly what that means, so if you could clarify, I'd give you a better answer. Maybe. King Uzi asked if I've ever heard about the red hydrogen phone, cinema camera, and smartphone. That sounds super interesting, but I have not heard about that. Roberto Herrera Perez says I like Fuji, but is not full frame sensor. For me, it's important, the full frame. I definitely get that. And again, I think a lot of that is like, I think a lot of that, it depends on what you shoot. I know that when I started shooting, I was doing a lot of Milky Way shots and a lot of night stuff. And when I was shooting nightscapes and night skies, a lot of times having the full frame, I was shooting a Nikon full frame system and using their 24mm f1.4 lens. And it was a sizable investment for that. But what I found is that moving outside of that genre, specifically of astrophotography, that, there were some differences. But King Uzi, just the Trapped in the Closet was R. Kelly, and South Park, actually. R. Kelly sang the song, he wrote the song, and then South Park dramatically popularized it. But then, yeah, I went to, once I started shooting Fuji and kind of went away from the full frame stuff, I realized that, honestly, the compromise or the sacrifice that I was making in terms of, just everything, the image quality, I guess you could say, was either non-existent, like there was no sacrifice perceptibly in terms of image quality, or it was small enough that the benefits of having a camera that was cheaper, lighter, smaller, and less obtrusive, especially when I started working with people, when I started doing like photo documentary projects where I was interviewing people, and I got the X100T, and I was just ripping off shots with that little camera, and like you have it in silent mode, and like, you're just sitting there kind of like, you look like you're diddling around with the screen, meanwhile you're taking pictures of them, and it's just ripping off shots of them. They're totally comfortable and relaxed because it looks like you have a little, point and shoot toy camera that's taking great quality photos. And when I would pull out my full frame camera, because I was shooting them kind of in tandem, it was like, oh, gotta get ready for the picture. Okay, here comes the picture. Now we're gonna like sit up and be like, and get a little bit tense. And I didn't have that issue when I was shooting with the smaller cameras. So I feel like there's definitely a trade-off, but I understand that some people, for the type of work that you may be doing, there may be a definitive advantage there for that. Rob from Zion Jeeps asks if I've thought about doing a model shoot where I'm both the model and the photographer. No, Rob, I have not thought about doing that. That's actually a fairly interesting idea, like as sort of a funny video, just because of the fact that I've never, I don't really shoot that style. I'm not like a portrait fashion photographer. But that could be kind of an interesting experiment. I'm going to put that in my list of possibly good ideas that I may look into at some point in the future. So that's yeah, that's an interesting one. I saw a comment here I want to touch on. King Uzi says, camera is a tool, paintbrush for the artist. If you have the skill, then you're all good. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things, kind of to bring things back to the original context of what I was talking about when we started here was, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Simon Cade from DSLR Guide. I've been listening to some podcasts that he was a speaker on, and as I'm trying to really dig more into the storytelling component of what I'm doing here, because what I'm doing here, it's like I'm excited because the channel has grown a lot in the last year. I mean, percentage-wise, I don't know, probably like 1,000% or something, just off the top of my head. Like, the channel has grown immensely, but it's also grown from incredibly tiny to still pretty small. And that's one of the things that happens when you're, making stuff. Whatever goal you set for yourself, when you hit that goal, it's like that goal never existed. Now you're only looking at the next goal. And so the desire to kind of reach the next, like, 10,000 subscribers and, like, get, that's part of it. And part of the thing too that I want to keep in mind when I'm doing this is, like, I do want to up production value, and I want to push my skill set, but I also want to make sure that I'm not getting too carried away with the wrong motivations for what I'm trying to do on the channel, because I think that, there's a certain level where, I know people, and we all probably know people like this, where they're such perfectionists that ultimately what they're creating becomes about them and kind of a reflection of them. And I mean, I think there's a certain element of this to any creative field, right, on some level, but like where it becomes, their ego gets so tied up in the perfectness of the images that they're creating, or the video, that they can't just put it out there and just really focus on creating value for the people who are watching it. And ultimately, that's why, I like to have these discussions with you guys, because it gives me some perspective on it to hear other people's opinions. And I do, read in the comments of my videos, and it's funny because, like, occasionally I'll get a comment on a video where someone would be like, oh, you talk too much, like, just get to the damn point already. And then I'll get, like, a bunch of comments where people will say, wow, this is really in depth, really well thought out. Thank you for going into detail and offering context on stuff and not just giving the bullet points the way that most people do. And so I look at it on one hand and I'm like, okay, do I do what I think other people want me to do, which is the short and tight bullet point, like with fast cuts and like the very bite-sized digestible thing? Or am I going to do something that feels authentic? And I think that there's still room to be authentic and to increase what you're doing. Daniel asks, have you monetized your channel? Yes, I have. I monetize all my videos. You really need to just establish workflow. Once you figure out the basics and create some shortcuts, you can move very quickly. Also, try to keep your setup ready. That's a very good point. And Rika says, just be you. And I think that there's a balance in there too, where, like, you can find a way to be yourself, but also be your best self, and to do it in a way that you're not, in other words, like, and using again, Simon from DSLR Guide, I watch his channel, and like the authenticity comes through, like, just so clear. It's like, he's the nicest, most likable person based on, his character. His character shines through just brilliantly. And he does, and it's such a good balance of good production, and I think the lighting is a big part of it, and kind of the locations and stuff like that, the way he shoots things. And he does it on a shoestring, and that to me is something that I really want to find a way that I want to work on. I want to put in more work, and I'm putting this out there because I want you guys to know, and I guess I'm kind of asking for some accountability on this, that I think that and I agree, Daniel, with what you said about, really getting the workflow. And I have found that when I was daily vlogging, that definitely helped me a lot to get that workflow flowing. And now that I am going to be having to incorporate study in different things now, with nursing, it's going to mean that my workflow is going to change a little bit, but it's also going to be a little bit different too. So they're going to be, I'm going to have more time and more space in certain areas because I'm not going to be around my family as much. And so I'm going to have gaps of free time or chunks of free time where I can batch some of my work and I can get more stuff done. And hopefully that will allow me to then have the time off and take time away from it and kind of just really learn the nuances of my new living situation and get a workflow set up that is aligned or tuned with my new thing that I'm doing. Because when I was daily vlogging, I had a good workflow for where I was and how I was living, and I think my workflow is halfway decent for where I am right now. It's just a little bit less predictable with like kids stuff, and as I go back to school, I'm going to be living a few hours away from my family and kind of commuting on the weekends to see them. So I'm going to have downtime during the week when I'm not studying or in class. And then, so I have to develop a workflow for that. So I'm with you. Christopher Xavier says, how do you feel about the YouTube algorithm that pushes you to focus on only one type of content for your channel? I'm into creative diversity, so this makes me apprehensive towards starting YouTube. That's a good question. I don't know that the YouTube algorithm necessarily pushes you to focus on only one type of content. I mean, maybe that's something that they're discussing, the suits, the powers that be. I hadn't heard that. I think that there is, that in a way, like if you can make your specificity about a broad enough thing, so you're specifically broad, if that makes any sense, and that's part of the reason why I put my my channel, it's about digital storytelling. That's kind of the thing. So that leaves me room to go to explore within that a little bit. And then also too, frankly, there are always going to be, specificity and landing on a specific topic or a certain group of topics, I think is really what it comes down to. If you're like all over the map, I think that could be really problematic. I think that if you are a person who has different interests, in other words, this channel is about digital storytelling. As a person, I have an interest in diet and nutrition. I have an interest in climbing, and travel, and adventure. Those are things that come out in the content that I make, while I wouldn't necessarily say that this channel is about climbing. So in other words, like, I don't know that I'm going to be making videos about here's how you tie a figure eight or here's how you rappel on this channel, because that's not really the focus. But, in talking about storytelling, and, my story is part of the storytelling that I want to dig into with you guys. So yeah, I'm going to have some climbing stuff in there. So I think there's a way to balance it out and make it work. And a lot of times, being realistic, the videos that put meat in the seats, those are the videos, why I'm selling my Fuji X-T2, or do I regret buying it, the stuff that's very searchable, very, specific to the type of stuff that the channel is meant to be about. And that's what happens when my diffuser goes out for a second. So I think there's different ways to do it, and I see some other comments in there that are useful, and I want to touch on a couple other things in here too, so I don't get too far behind. Rika says, "Do you think if you notified ahead of time about your live streams, it might help the live viewership?" Probably, but the question is, how do I'm not sure what you mean by notifying ahead of time. Do you mean like referencing that in other videos, or do you mean like sending out blasts on Twitter? Most of my Twitter following is not really connected to my YouTube channel, which eventually, since I've kind of just started getting serious on YouTube in the last year, I think that it's, that dynamic is going to start to shift. And in terms of having a specific time where people can count on it and saying this is the time every week, one of the things that's challenging for me to do that at this point is that, schedules change, things are, things do it. So Yeah, I think what you might be referring to, I know that there are like Tim on Video Creators. He does like text message blasts that people can sign up for, and you can also enable notifications and stuff. Right now, the live streams are kind of an auxiliary thing that I'm doing as part of the channel. They're not like a meat and potatoes thing. I don't consider it that, just because of the fact that it's a little bit casual. It's not super predictable. And a lot of that is because, you know, when I'm doing this stuff, I'm taking up time and space from my family. I got to put my daughter to bed. Sometimes her bedtime is a little bit flexible. Sometimes my wife is working. She has to go to bed earlier or later. I have to move the times around. And so until or unless I can say, all right, I have a space to do this where I know that I can do it, and like I'm in the closet adjoining our room and my daughter, you know, and so it's like there's shared space, and there's other considerations basically that force me to be flexible in the timing. And so eventually I hope to get I hope to get to the point where I have space and flexibility to say this is when it's going to be, and then kind of build that into the thing so that people know every week this is when the live stream happens, period. And there's not the, you know, around this time I do the live streams where, you know, I try to do it between 8 and 9 typically, but it doesn't always come off it doesn't always go exactly the way that, I want to have it. So, yeah, Mario says, in my opinion, keep once a week fixed time live feed like this one. Just don't do it at the same time as Ken. Yeah, I've done a few of his live streams. I've tuned in, but I don't really. Yeah, I know a lot of people get into that. Okay, there's a couple other really good things here. Daniel Cruddy in reference to the workflow, so I keep stuff set up for thumbnails, logos to be reused. I do that too. I write down transitions, effects I like. And what I do actually in my workflow when I'm editing, I have all of the transitions, subtitles, and the kind of the main things that are always going to be used in my videos predominantly, that are kind of specific to the videos I'm creating, or not specific to the videos, but just generally part of the branding, I guess you could say, for my channel. Those are on each timeline. I have those already preset and ready to go, so I just kind of move them around, and that definitely helps go faster and save some time. Alright, Bold Pertune says, I'm going to do YouTube videos. What do you suggest I buy as a first camera and lenses? I have a budget of $2,000. Both wide and tele lenses needed. Can one get a decent setup with such a budget? Yes, if you're still on, you can definitely get a very decent setup for that budget. I would want to know what you're planning on shooting predominantly. Like, what is it that you are doing your YouTube videos about? Different people may have different opinions about this, and again, without knowing all the nuances of what you want to shoot, how, where, and why, I would say that the Panasonic G7 or the G85 with a 12 to 35 millimeter lens is a really, really hard combination to beat. Or even like one of those, the G85 or the G7 with a speed booster and a Canon FD 24 millimeter lens on it, which you have to use manual focus on the speed booster combo, but either of those would get you making videos 4K with very high quality stuff for much less than $2,000 and put some money in your pocket. I think that it's really important, especially if you're just starting a YouTube channel, that you think that you have like a practice setup. Look at the system that you really like and that you want to, hey Peter, good to have you here. Figure out a system that you like, that you would want to buy into, so that you can get glass that you can upgrade the body later. So in other words, if your dream camera is the Panasonic GH5, which I have that, it is a fantastic camera, and there's a great deal of elbow room for me to grow with that. But if you think the Panasonic GH5 is the way to go, start off with the G7. You can get it for $350, $400 on eBay, right? You get that, you buy some lenses, figure out the lenses that are good, experiment a little bit there, and then once you really get solid, you have a year under your belt. And I know this is like, nobody wants to hear this because everybody wants to think I have $2,000 to spend. If I spend this much money, if I spend $2,000 instead of $1,500 or $1,200, then I'm going to be getting an equivalent amount of quality out of what I'm doing. And to me, I think that figure out the lens ecosystem that you want to buy into first, and then figure out the body that goes with that, that allows you to save the most money so that you can spend your time making videos and that you have budget left over to go someplace and do that, or to buy accessories that you need, or to buy the program that you need to edit that stuff, or to buy music, like a subscription to Epidemic Sound, where you can buy, you know, music for your YouTube channel, that you have a huge selection that makes like video projects so much better and so much easier when you don't have to worry about getting dinged for copyrights or like stealing somebody's music and doing something shady. But you have that all available to you just real easy, but you have that money because you didn't spend it all on a camera. So for $2,000, yeah, I would say that you can definitely do it. I would say try to shoot to do it in around $1,000 or even less, because with the G7, you can do that. You can, and then, you know, your first year of videos on YouTube, a lot of them are not going to be focused on the bells and whistles that you would get out of a, you know, a more expensive camera. You know, so I would say G7 with a speed booster and some old Canon manual focus lenses. And again, everybody has different opinions, might agree or disagree with that based on what you need. Like if you're doing makeup videos, manual focus probably is going to make your life a nightmare, right? If you're wanting to shoot cinematic stuff or vlog type stuff, you could definitely work around that with manual focus. And frankly, for a lot of things, I think manual focus is even preferable because it gives you more control over what's going on. But of course, with control, you know, then also comes responsibility, because, you know, you can miss focus on shots and stuff like that. So I hope that helps at all. I know that's a kind of a very opinionated question, but different people have different thoughts about that and maybe want to chime in. But that's my opinion, because, you know, if you wind up getting a body that you like but the glass isn't as good, like the glass you can always hang on to, the body you can upgrade as needed. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, I'm keeping one of my Fuji lenses, because someday I may have finances to where I can afford to upgrade and get a good body again for this. But in the meantime, I can still keep shooting on that lens without having to have a whole bunch of money tied up in a camera that's way more expensive than what I actually need. And in the meantime, I can get on with my life and actually do stuff, because, you know, keep that extra money in your budget for doing other things, for accessories and just for going places. You know, there's a lot that you can do with that money that will increase the value of the videos that you can make. And part of the thing too is, like, if you're just starting to make videos, your first year, I started saying this before, like your first year of videos, unless you are like a prodigy, a lot of your videos are going to suck. Like from a technical perspective, and a lot of what you're going to look at, you're going to be dying 1,000 deaths being like, oh, that's awful, how did I put that out there? You know, I look back at my stuff and I'm like, oh, this is hard to watch, right? But if you're making stuff that's kind of like, that looks very beginner-ish, and you're making it on a camera that's like an intro, just a starter package type thing, you feel much better about it, because it's not like, oh, I'm making really clunky vlogs on a really expensive camera. But it's like, oh yeah, I have whatever, this is a $300 camera. I don't have to make, you know, I don't have to shoot like a Hollywood motion picture on this. I can just play with it and have fun. And as you play with it and have fun, then you learn to walk, or you learn to crawl, then that enables you to learn to walk, and then you learn to run from there. And then when it's time to invest bigger dollars, you won't be asking, or you may still ask somebody, oh, what do you think I should get? But you'll have a pretty good idea in your head already of what you want. Yeah, some other good ideas here too. King Uzi says, watch a few different YouTube reviews for each lens before you buy it. You look at some test footage, see what it looks like. You could use your cell phone with clip-on lenses. I know there's a new smartphone that's out recently that's like, you know, has like a 19 megapixel camera and like 4K display. Peter Kent says, when starting out, go as cheap as you can. There are a lot of little things you'll need to buy, and that is very true. Little things like memory cards, hard drives for storage, an external microphone, an audio recorder. These are all like software for your computer, music licensing through Epidemic Sound or some other type of you know, equivalent service, books, you know, that kind of stuff. Yeah, and tripods, tripod heads, quick releases, all of that stuff. Filters, you know, an ND filter, neutral density filter, to kind of allow you to shoot at slower shutter speeds in brighter light. Those can be really useful as well. Extra batteries. So yeah, you know, figure out a lens ecosystem and then go as cheap as you can in that ecosystem. Get your first year or two out of the way, and then go from there. That would be my answer. All right, guys, I got about 9 minutes left here, about an hour deep, and I'm going to start winding it down. If you guys have questions, anything that you want to talk about, I'm excited to be kind of, you know, I'm a little nervous as well as excited to be in a transitional period. You know, getting rid of a lot of gear, selling a lot of gear, and then also kind of adapting to having less gear. But honestly, it kind of feels good, because it was always causing me a lot of frustration when I would come in here and I would look at all the gear that I had that I don't use, or that I wasn't able to use on a consistent basis enough for me to justify having it, and now liquidating that feels really good. So, Lauren L. says, I'm tired of gear. I'm lucky enough to be able to buy whatever camera and lens I want, but I decided to stick with a small mirrorless with a 1855 kit lens plus a 35. That sounds like a good call. That is, you know, less. I think less is more, and I am going to do a video once I figure out how to write it with better production value than just talking head stuff, to illustrate the reason why I am a huge fan of the whole less is more in terms of still photography, and why I believe that fewer options oftentimes are better for training us to see and to create stuff, and why effectively primes in my mind are way better for, especially for stills, than zooms are, at least to my liking personally. And I think a lot of it has to do with that idea that, like, you know, less choices, less decisions, and more focus on just making, and that's a good place to be in. So anyways, guys, those of you who are on right now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you do that. Enable notifications so you get my videos when I post them. I am going to be away for a couple of weeks, so there is a likelihood that I am not going to be doing live streams for at least the next 2 Fridays. But again, if you follow me on Twitter, I'm at Living Vertical on Twitter, at Living Vertical on Instagram. Any of those channels, you can get in touch and figure out, you know, what's going on there, and I kind of update people with more of the housekeeping stuff on those streams. And I will be publishing videos. I'm going to do my very best to stick to the 2 videos weekly, even during the next couple of weeks while I'm out traveling, as much as possible. So subscribe with confidence and know that I'm going to do my best to share everything that's going on as I'm out there shooting for this new project, and I'll try to tell you about that in some of the upcoming videos next week. So, all right, guys, that's what I got for you tonight. I hope you guys all have a good weekend. If you want, or if you have any other questions, thoughts, etc., drop comments below this video, and I will respond to them as best I can. I try to get stay on top of my correspondence pretty decently. Appreciate you guys tuning in. And Fridays between 8 and 9 p.m. I know that's not as airtight as it could be, but that's when I do these live streams. So I look forward to seeing you guys the next time I do a live stream, which hopefully will be in 2 weeks, and possibly even, you know, I might hop on and surprise you guys on next Friday. So take care, you all. It's been good chatting, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Adventure Photo Show. That'll be fun. I'm going to talk all about why I got rid of the X-T2, and everybody will hate on me for that. So should be fun. Looking forward to it. Take care, guys.